Welcome back to another week of On the Water Striper Migration Reports. My name is Matt Haeffner. I'm the assistant editor here. I realize I probably haven't introduced myself in a couple of the past videos, but joining us this week, at least for the start of the video, is On the Water's editor, Jimmy Fee. Jimmy,
hello.
How you doing?
Good, I'm good.
You look good in that Grundens hat, I gotta say.
I feel good.
I'm used to you basically bending the brim of your hats into oblivion.
I'm going to be a rope cap guy this season. So
rope cap, flat brim guy?
Yeah, that's me. I think that's me. I'm
It's a good
reinventing
look.
myself.
It's a good look. So. Well, I didn't bring you on to talk about your hat selection, but what I wanted to talk about is, we've had a fair amount of striper movement since this April full moon passed. And, it's still been very cold this spring. It's been years since the Northeast experienced such a cold winter and early spring. But based on your years of experience on Cape Cod, how critical are water temperatures to early spring success? Like, do you find that the early arrivals tend to be a little more lethargic until those water temps hit that magic 50-degree mark, or?
It's funny. I think there's so many factors that drive the striper, the fishing around here. One's the arrival of bait fish. The other one is the moon phase. Then you have the water temperature. So there's no one thing that's going to fully control or fully control what happens with fishing wise. You're usually within about a week to 10 days of, let's say, April 18th for when you see the first migratory fish on the vineyard. Then within like a week to 10 days of that, you see them on this side of the Cape. But even if the water's still cold, that arrival of river herring, that influx, that gets the resident fish active, and then it also kind of sets the table for those larger first migrants to come up here.
So before we talk a little bit about river herring, you mentioned resident fish, and like I said, we're coming off that April full moon. There's been some schoolies arriving off of the vineyard this week, and actually late last week, I should say. But aside from the presence of sea lice, what indicators can people use to kind of differentiate between resident stripers and those early arrivals? Especially in the backwaters.
Yeah, so sea lice are the main one. The fish, they catch those in the ocean. They're these parasitic copepods that feed on the slime and kind of in the, any blood or anything on the fish. And when the fish move into more brackish waters, the copepods need a high salinity. So when they move into more brackish waters or backwaters, they tend to drop off because the conditions aren't right for them. So those fish that have been moving through the ocean have those parasitic copepods on them. So we see them, they've been out in the open, high salinity waters. That's the main way that people kind of differentiate between a migratory fish and a holdover. You can go a little bit by the color. When the stripers do have a way of adapting, they're not like a fluke where they're going to totally change their colors, but there's some slight adaptations. You catch one over a shallow sandy flat, it's going to be very tan sometimes. You catch them in the backwaters, they're a little duller and browner as opposed to you get them fresh out of the ocean. They've got those black backs and kind of the more purple sides to them. So they look more almost pelagic.
Those cold water hues to them, the blues and greens and things you see on those ocean fish. It's good indicators. So you also mentioned river herring, and Kevin and I very briefly touched on it in last week's report. But, they populate many of those early spring areas that stripers find favorable for water temperatures and other reasons. But is it fair to say that river herring play an equally important role in New England as bunker do in places like Long Island and New Jersey?
See, man, going way back, like river herring were as important in the very early season, even in New Jersey. And I know less about Long Island then, but they were a major part of the fishing season. My fishing season in March in New Jersey started with, I would go with my sabiki rigs to lighted docks behind the piers, sabiki up a bunch of river herring, and sometimes they were sea herring, depending on how cold the winter was, and would live line those to the first stripers of the year. And herring, anybody who's watching this who remembers when you could fish for herring, it's been a good, man, we're going on 20 years now that you haven't been able to fish live herring anywhere except the Hudson River.
Yeah.
They were striper candy. They were the perfect bait fish. They were small enough to cast, small enough that the bass could take them in one shot, and great hookup ratio on them. And in the rivers, especially in the Delaware River was one of the main places guys would catch them and then drift with a live herring. And it was automatic. If you had 10 herring, you're getting 10 striper bites.
Yeah.
So they were a major part of my early season back then. And that was before the bunker bite really started getting going. But we do see the bunker coming in April. Like right now, I took a drive down along Vineyard Sound the other day and saw gannets overfished. No, they could be over river herring. They could be over bunker. But there are gannets moving through Vineyard Sound right now, and that's usually an indication that there are some bigger bait fish coming through. Should I keep rambling on herring? Because I've got a lot more to say.
Go ahead.
So there's two different types of river herring. There's alewives and there's blueback herring.
Right.
And in general, their numbers aren't doing great. We see a lot more alewives than we do blueback herring. Talking to some people in Connecticut, and I remember from New Jersey, blueback herring were the ones that used to drive the better fishing.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
And they said that was because the alewives get here early. Massachusetts, we may see our first alewives of the year in March. So they're shooting up the rivers and up their herring runs before the stripers get here. The bluebacks tended to get here a little bit later. They arrived around the same time as the stripers. So when the bass would move up the rivers, they were kind of right on the tails of the blueback herring. Now, as their numbers declined, they do eat the alewives when the alewives drop back, but herring started to play kind of a smaller role in the herring in the striper fishery in the springtime. So they still do get on the alewives. You see them, especially places like the canal, where you'll have a whole big bunch, big school of them backed up, waiting to run up there. You'll have the stripers harassing them. But without the bluebacks in bigger numbers, herring, bunker everywhere right now are a bigger part of the fishery.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm glad you did bring up blueback herring, though, because we ran an article a few years ago from, I believe it was Kevin Jobs of the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, and he basically said that without those numbers of blueback herring in the rivers in the spring, there's a noticeable decrease in the amount of bigger fish in the spring in those rivers.
Yeah, the fish are just going to latch on to other different baits that are more readily available as they arrive, and lately that's been bunker. I mean, we've had bunker year round on the Cape in some cases. You and I have seen them in the backwaters while fishing for white perch.
Yeah, in February.
I've seen big schools of them just walking, around the harbors in Buzzards Bay in mid-April.
Yeah.
So the bunker will get here early, and that's what your first wave of good-sized fish are going to latch onto them, as opposed to maybe not as much the herring as it used to be.
Absolutely, and segueing into discussions of bunker and things, Buzzards Bay in years past has been a producer of good bunker bites with fish to 40, 45 inches in some cases, and Robbie who works here, Robbie Tartaglia, has been on that bite, and it just didn't seem like last year they ever really pulled up in good numbers in Buzzards Bay. But is there a certain bite, like is that a bite that you tend to look forward to? I know you do a lot of early spring surf casting on different parts of Buzzards Bay. So is that a bite you look forward to? Is there a certain bite you're looking forward to this spring that hasn't, commenced in years past?
See, I have a real love-hate relationship with bunker as a shore fisherman. I think a lot of shore fishermen do.
Yeah.
Bunker are like a big school of bunkers, like a vacuum cleaner for the stripers. Like they may move in and settle into ambush points and hang out on predictable pieces of structure that you can reach from shore. When the bunker move through, it's like a magnet pulling iron fillings out of the sand. Like they will grab every striped bass in the area and they will just kind of sit in there on the bunker pattern. Mm-hmm. Then they move around with the bunker schools, and it's a little less predictable because you can somewhat guess where the bunker are going to move day to day. But some years they just don't show up. Right. Last year we had a ton of them here in April. They blasted through the canal in early May and then settled in Cape Cod Bay, which didn't do, you and I fishing around the Upper Cape, that didn't do us very much good.
No, it was really the Tinker Max that we kind of leaned on last year with the canal, yeah.
So bunker, they're a tough species to predict. There's a lot of them around right now. I learned from Micah Dean, who came in for a podcast last year, that we do actually have spawning populations of bunker up in New England. I never knew that before. So our bunker population is strong. It's just a matter of where they're going to settle in for the summer. Is that going to be Buzzards Bay? Is it going to be Rhode Island? Last year, in general, was a tough year for bunker, and a lot of people I know blamed all the rain we had in March. Now, we had some rain this past weekend, but not the torrential downpours we had for almost what felt like the whole month of March in 2024. So this year, maybe they said that all the rain lowered the salinity, kept the bunker further offshore and out of the bays until later in the season. Even the guys in Narragansett Bay had a tough time finding bunker through May last year. So we'll see if things are different this year. We've had kind of a drier spring and definitely a colder spring.
Yeah. I would say the winter, though, was heavy on precipitation. Like you had a lot of snow, even up until a week and a half ago. Vermont and New Hampshire, places along the Connecticut River, had just tons of snow dump into the mountains there. So, that early spring runoff, that will probably keep water temperatures pretty cold, I'd say, until the first couple weeks of end of April, first week or two of May, when those bunker actually start to pull up off the Connecticut River in Long Island Sound. So, I think we've still got a lot to look forward to. There's definitely been some early spring movement from from the schoolies, and we're going to hear a little more about that from our guests this week. But Jimmy, thank you for coming on. I know your striper season hasn't necessarily started yet, but schoolies are in the area, and once we get this silly office largemouth bass tournament out of the way, it'll be full bore on striper fishing.
It ends May 1, trying to get one big bass to topple Cheech from the top of our office tournament. Then we can talk about the actual fishing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thanks a lot, Jimmy. On the Water striper migration reports are brought to you by Grundens. The Grundens brand was born almost 100 years ago in the small fishing village of Grundens, Sweden, when Carl A. Grunden began making waterproof oilskins to protect fishermen from the harsh conditions of the North Sea. Today, Grundens continues to bring that same level of quality and care to their extensive line of technical apparel for commercial and recreational fishermen. I've been fishing in Grundens Bedrock wading boots and Vector zip stocking foot waders, as well as the Portal Gore-Tex wading jacket. I actually had it on in the rain last night. Water beads up, rolls right off the jacket. It's great. It's kept me safe, it's kept me dry, kept me comfortable, no matter the conditions. I'm really looking forward to breaking them in as the striper season gets underway. The Gore-Tex Portal wading jacket is packed with waterproof features like neoprene sleeve cuffs, a drop hood with a high collar that shields me from harsh winds and pelting rain, and it is specifically designed to perform in cold weather and deep wading situations, so I can keep casting to stripers through the elements from early spring through late fall. There's truly no better fit for a Northeast surf caster. Check out all their wading gear and more at grundens.com. Grundens, we are fishing. All right, so first things first, let's take a quick look at our most recent striper migration map from April 11th. Keep in mind that this map came out a day prior to the full moon, so there's been a decent shift in the presence of migratory fish further north since then. Down in Chesapeake Bay and Maryland, striped bass fishing is currently closed in the Chesapeake Bay and will remain that way until May 16th. Now, striper fishing is not closed throughout the state of Maryland. It's specifically the Chesapeake Bay and those tributaries so that the stripers can spawn. Spawning did continue this week in the Middle Bay tributaries, according to the Maryland DNR. Following a good week of spawning activity, a quick multi-day cold snap brought a drastic drop in water temperatures. So we've got our fingers crossed that those eggs and offspring were able to withstand those colder temperatures. Meanwhile, in the coastal bays and marshes, anglers near Ocean City, Maryland are seeing some average schoolie fishing as those fish hit the starting gates on their northerly migration. We'll hear a bit more about that from our guests in a few minutes. But as a result, the backwaters of southern New Jersey have been a bit of a revolving door with waves of fresh fish moving in and out since those schoolies are starting to move out of some of those coastal bays and marshes. So a little bit further north in New Jersey, in the Raritan Bay, the area received another wave of larger fish in the low to mid 40-inch class that have been feeding on bunker that continue to move into the backwaters. Anglers are having good success with swim shads, metal-lipped swimmers, and minnow plugs. And for those of you who focus on lure color, chartreuse is a safe bet after some high winds, and stronger moon tides churned up those muddy river bottoms. So definitely think about throwing chartreuse, bright colors. Although, personally, I like to throw black or blurple plugs a lot when the water is that stained. That light brown color seems to get noticed a little bit more. Chartreuse is also a great choice, though. So kind of cover both ends of the spectrum if you're throwing plugs in the Raritan Bay and the area rivers up there. Smaller male stripers are slowly working their way north in the Hudson, where they'll be feeding on river herring and setting up to spawn, waiting on those big females to come up, which we can expect as they exit the Raritan Bay towards the end of the month and start to move up the Hudson. By then, there will likely be some big spawned out Chesapeake fish moving along the beaches of Long Island and New Jersey, so we have that to look forward to. That's typically a bite that's, carries over from year to year. I wouldn't say it's a regular thing, but it's over the recent years, it's been a reliable bite for guys in northern New Jersey. Up in New York and Long Island, we've had a noticeable uptick in striper activity in the western Long Island Sound this week, with mostly silver sides, some peanut bunker here and there on the menu in the back bays. We're just starting to hear about adult bunker beginning to trickle in as well, so if you haven't yet, pack those shallow diving metal lips and focus on fishing a falling tide around shallow mud flats, especially if you have some afternoon sun. That's always a good time to plan your outings that night, especially if you have a falling tide. Down on the south shore of Long Island, striper fishing has been a little more hit or miss than usual, but there are bass to be caught in the western bays as the action slowly bleeds east. The bass have been chewing well in those prefrontal conditions before a storm system moves in, or prior to a sudden drop in temperature, which hopefully, fingers crossed, we're kind of done with those. I do think we'll see an increase in activity later this week into early next week, with more mild, sunny weather in the forecast, driving the fish to feed with some more aggression. The average size class of fresh migratory fish on Long Island right now is in that 20 to low 30 inch range, but some larger fish have been reported on the North Shore up to around 25 pounds, and that's probably a result of those bunkers starting to move into those areas. Assuming that continues, we'll see the average size class of stripers improve as they look to fatten up and continue migrating east along the beaches. Some of those fish may also be staging up to run up the Hudson. Hopping across the Sound to Connecticut and Rhode Island, the striper bite shifts a little bit. There are mixed reports of fresh migratory schoolies along Connecticut's western beaches, while in the rivers, fish in the 10 to 20 pound class are being caught near herring runs. That's Jimmy and I were touching on that a little bit earlier. In southern New England during the early spring, those herring produce some of the first respectable bass of the season, and even if they're resident fish, much like bunker do in the backwaters of New Jersey. In Little Rhodey, a wave of laced up schoolies arrived to the western border of the state over the past couple weeks. Although it's been a slow transition to migratory fish, there's still a lot of holdover activity there. But Vinny Cerbara, who some of you may know better as the Wombat Chugger on Instagram, said he caught his first laced up schoolie about 2 weeks ago, which is certainly the earliest we've heard of migratory bass this far north. But now, with surfcasters starting to see laced up schoolies on the beaches of Martha's Vineyard, it is go time in New England. Start getting the surf gear ready. Those bass are going to be moving in along the beaches on the south side of Cape, Buzzards Bay, and especially in some of those smaller river systems where herring are present. So as the striper fishing ramps up in New York, New Jersey, and southern New England, we're going to actually slide back south and check in on the bite in Ocean City, Maryland with Captain Jeff Rosenkilde of Bad Habit Sport Fishing and Always Bent Fishing OC. Take it away, Jeff.
What up, guys? Jeff here with Always Bent. Thank you so much on the water for allowing us to do this weekly report for Ocean City, Maryland, the striper report. So I would summarize the fishing the last couple weeks as being average. When we're getting these warmer days, these warmer, trends, couple days that are warm, the fishing seems to really heat up. And then we'll have, we've had these last couple days, last week, freezing cold temperatures, and it's been very hard to find them. Although I have had, we'll get into that, but I have caught some fish these last couple days. Just switched up what I was doing. Currently, we're seeing fish 18 to 25 inches. Occasionally, I've caught fish pushing 30 inches this year. Didn't measure them, but they were, I've had probably 7, 8 to 10 fish that are 28, 30 inches this year. The rest have been, 25, 24, 20-ish, but I would say, your schoolie, your typical everyday schoolie fish. The fish that we have kept this year that have been legal have been just filled to, their stomachs have been filled with crabs, little tiny crabs in bunker. We've got a lot of bunker here, a lot of bunker in the bay, which I've been imitating these past couple of weeks. I've been throwing stuff that looks like a bunker. I've been throwing this 5-inch Bass Assassin and then this 5-inch D-Man here, Smoky Shad here, 3/8 ounce on my jigs. Last couple of days has been dark, cold. I don't know if there's as many bunker around with these cold fronts, so I switched to a purple, this 4-inch electric shad on a 3/8 ounce here. And that's really been doing the trick lately. I've been getting all my bites on the smaller bait just recently here. Still, I always carry 2 rods out on the marsh. I carry one with a bigger lure and one with a smaller one. My smaller lure's been working lately. But I really expect the fishing here to start picking up. Very difficult this spring for us compared to last spring was awesome for us down here. I had 35-inch fish almost every time I went out, in this time of year, end of March, April. But it's been very tough. There hadn't been a lot of big fish around. There's been a lot of schoolie fish. But I expect some consistency, fish to show up in some spots that they always are in, every year. And that's what I expect. So on the water, thank you guys so much for allowing us to do this report. And if you guys don't subscribe, Always Bent, please do. Thank you guys. Stay bent.
On the Water striper migration reports are also brought to you by Quantum. Stripers are back, and so is Quantum with their new Benchmark and Strive spinning reels. I had a chance to fish the surf with the Benchmark 6000 during the fall striper migration last year, and it is a true workhorse. Performs great in all kinds of surf, but especially in that heavy, rough surf that you get during the fall run and even during the early spring when all those storm systems are moving through. The 6,000 size Quantum Benchmark boasts 35 pounds of fish-stopping drag power, and like all Benchmark models, it is highly resistant to heavy water pressure and sand or salt intrusion, which makes it a great choice for fishing big surf. The Strive 3000 spinning combo, which includes the same water-resistant qualities, was a top performer from the kayak and boat when stripers and bluefish fed alongside schools of large bonito last fall. The fully sealed Strive spinning reel is complemented by a sensitive but durable graphite composite rod with a stainless steel guide train, so I can focus on fighting fish with confidence instead of worrying about chipped, scratched, or corroded guides. To learn more about how Quantum is setting the new standard in saltwater fishing, check out quantumfishing.com. Quantum, tested beyond limits. All right, thank you, Jeff, for providing some insight on the action down in Ocean City, Maryland. With the April full moon in the rear view and schoolies migrating out of those coastal bays and salt marshes, Delaware and New Jersey should continue to see steadily improving striper action. The clam bite on the beaches has not yet developed, but in the back bays, fish to 20 pounds are being caught. So to get a better idea of what the bass bite is like in Ocean County, New Jersey, here's Scott Thomas of Grumpy's Tackle in Seaside Park. Go ahead, Scott.
What's up, guys? Scott here from Grumpy's Tackle. Our fishing over the past 2 weeks has been spotty, but we expect that to pick up over the next week or so as this warmer air moves in. We haven't really heard of anything out front in the ocean, but with this warm snap and more people getting out there, we think we're going to hear of some fish being caught. Generally, we have a clam bite on the beach in the spring, and we are expecting the same thing this year. There has been some decent fishing in the bay. We have some mixed sizes there. We've got your usual schoolies that you're going to catch, your rats, but we're hearing of some fish up to 18, 20 pounds in our back bay right behind the shop off the local docks, and then the usual haunts that guys hit in the spring. We're seeing a good amount of bunker locally and up north. We're hearing a lot of guys, just snagging it while they're reeling in plugs and stuff. So we think we're going to have some bunker in the back and hopefully get a topwater bite going soon. And like I said, with that warmer air coming in, we're expecting things to really pop off. We're hearing of some drum in the back bay now as well. We expect that to pick up over the next couple of days. So get out there and fish, guys.
All right, good to hear from Scott and the Grumpy's team. We appreciate that report, Scott. Despite more unseasonably cold weather this spring, the April full moon has certainly set things in motion with some larger bass in the mix for Jersey anglers. And with warmer weather in the forecast this week, now is a good time to start looking for fish in the inlets and on the oceanfront beaches. That's it for our regional reports this week, so let's get some insight on the big picture from our friends over at Canyon Runner. On the Water Striper Migration Reports are brought to you by Canyon Runner, powered by VM. The Canyon Runner Virtual Captain and Tracking Map is coming soon to inshore anglers chasing stripers and all other inshore species for as low as $99 a year. It serves as your co-captain, providing weather, water temperature, and safety information with a built-in warning system and so much more. Gain the ability to track each and every member and pro staff boat in real time on one page, one map, one website, one helm. Know where the fleet is at all times and extend your network of buddy boats in real time. Learn more at www.canyonrunner.com. Canyon Runner, why don't you guys take it away?
All right, Matt. Welcome to another week. Canyon Runner is always excited to be on here with our virtual captain map, focusing on the weather as always, because that's what this is all about. I don't think I need to. It's almost like a Greek tragedy what went on with the weather. Pictures of snowfall and 30-degree temperatures in the morning. That, if you've been listening to what we've been talking about the last few weeks, that is not good for what we're trying to do here. And that's to kick off the heart of the striper season, to get things going for everybody. And unfortunately went backwards this week. But let's start with looking forward. Then we'll talk about what happened. So we're going to look at the big picture again. We're going to look at, there's two big low pressure systems here. And we always pull out to look at the big picture. Now, we have up to 600 boats on this map here. So I'm going to start taking some of these boats off so we can better look at just the weather. And as we come into this week, we're going to see a major high come across the country. And look, it goes to down here into the south. Now that's usually like a summer high system comes down here. We get all this high coming in that's like below us, which means usually warm weather. Going to get over us by Friday. It's going to move slowly. Just on the big picture here, we might be in for a good week. So what are we in for? Again, I'm just going to put it on New York because it's kind of the middle of everyone we're talking to. And look at that temperature. Now, last week, we're talking snow for many people. We're talking mornings and nights where it was in the low 30s. Well, this is what we want. We want it look at this. These are your lows now, 54, 55, 53, 47, right? And then the real warmth comes during the day. And where these bass are now, what we've been talking about for weeks, they're in the flats, they're in the shallows. So 65, we're recording this today on Monday, 67. The worst of it's 53. I mean, look at Thursday, Friday. It's gonna be lights out fishing by Saturday, Sunday, coming into the weekend. I mean, guaranteed that's what's gonna go on right now. But let's look at the water temperature. So we'll click out of this. We'll go to our water temperature shots. Now this is, now, as you know, the weather was bad. Most days was cloud cover. Searched a little bit. This is an actual shot off of one of the satellites, daytime shot on Wednesday the 9th. Here's your actual temperature. So you slide up here into Raritan Bay, and unfortunately, we're looking at 49. It was, above 50 last week. Come down the coast, it was 55, 56 in these bays. Look, 49, there's some 52, but it cooled off. What we heard from most of our pro staff and our members, they're looking at 3 to 5 degree temperature had dropped to places they were fishing. And that's going to shock the fish too. We'll get into that in a second as well. Even you come down here in the Delaware Bay, look, we're at 51. And okay, and yes, you come up in here, 52, 53. So we're getting to the temperatures where things didn't change enough to shock the fish. Plenty of bass were caught along the edges, again in the flats, all in these areas. The rockfish, as you folks like to call them down here, as we like to call them as well, rockfish in and out of these areas as well, because you've got the temperature. You've got 52, 51 degrees. Hey, just as a heads up, as we're looking at the map here, these are the real-time positions of some of our boats. They're all out here looking for bluefins. Beautiful day today on Monday. You got a bunch of guys going. The mod squad, who's been beating up on the bass a bunch, is out here looking for bluefins. What some of this gives us, and let's see if we could click on this, we're going to get some real-time water temperatures in a second off these boats. There you go. Let's see. 45 degrees. Now, here we go. So we could stop thinking about ocean bass for a little bit because we're looking at 45 degrees. That is right now at 9 a.m. off of Ocean City, Maryland. It's just not going to happen. Let's come up the beach. We have Wolfpack out here. This was Wolfpack, I believe, on the 9th. It was 45 degrees on the 9th. He's out here in the ocean right now. It's 45 degrees on the 14th. The ocean just, as you know, had no chance of warming up, and it's not going to. So we're going to get out of the water temperature conversation very quickly because it's just not happening out in the ocean. But we'll look up here. Look at this. This was on the 9th. It's 42, 43 degrees. There's absolutely nothing going on up here. We had a boat move on the 4th. It was 43 degrees. So, and this is the actual temperature on the 9th. And you know what you saw? Again, going back to what we're looking at with temperatures for the forecast for this week of the 14th, by next weekend, we're going to see completely different. We're going to see 55 degrees in all these areas. There's going to be lights out fishing. So let's get to some of the reports. You can see from this map, we've got a bunch of fishing reports up now. We'll start to the north this time. Again, we had folks looking around in here. The water's just too cold. But one of our new pro staff, Fatback Charters, out here out of Jamaica Bay, again, what are we looking at? We're looking at the creeks. We're looking at the estuaries filling out into the bays. Well, this is JFK Airport over here. And in this area, you can see the bass fishing in Raritan Bay, they're up on schedule, but back in this area is the same thing. We'll go over Raritan Bay, but if you look at the bass peeling out of here, all in these spots right here, we've got bass action up on the edges, again, in the flatter areas where it's a little shallower, where it could warm up quick. There's been a ton of bait so far this season, more than previous seasons. That's the key. Fatback is seeing a ton of bait up in there, better than usual, and it's probably going to get good in here. Probably by, it doesn't take long because it's so shallow in here. Probably by Wednesday, Thursday this week, it'll really kick off. And then why Raritan Bay is what we talk about a lot. These bass that are back here are going to spill out. And then we're back in here again. We had pro staff take a lap up here in the bay. But again, if we looked at the water temperatures, what were we talking about? It's only 47, 48 degrees. They've been looking, all right, but it's still just too cold. They need the 55 degrees. So they've been taking laps in here, looking around, keeping honest. Then they end up back in here. Now, Sunday, we got pictures back from guys fishing. The water was as muddy as you're going to get. We also got pictures back from their fish finders, and the bass were so stacked up right here, more than they've ever seen. Water temperature dropped 6, 7 degrees. The water was muddy. You had zero visibility. They still caught a few because the bass were literally stacked up from top to bottom, but they were just not on the feed. But it's going to go off, and it's going to warm up enough where these fish are going to, they're mostly fishing west of the bridge. We talked about a lot in between the railroad bridge and the Garden State Parkway, but they're going to fill right out into, this is the triangle area, and then be off the pier pretty soon. And then up in here as well, up in the East River, you'll see fish. But this is where I bet you we're going to see 100 to 200 boats on Saturday. We've got a holiday weekend coming up. But on Saturday, with that 78-degree temperature potentially, there'll be 100 to 200 boats, and they'll probably, best fishing will be in here. But there'll be boats all through this area, working all these edges, the edges of the channels, out in here into the Navy Pier. Up on the flats in here, there's fish right now. These fish kind of funnel out and they stay right in here along the edge where it's really shallow and really warm. You guys will just get better and better. Now, as we move down the coast, listen, we haven't talked a lot about this, but look, all the pictures we saw for weeks, it's the exact same stuff in here. There's bass sitting up here in the warm waters. They funnel out. There's plenty caught here, plenty caught around the Oceanic Bridge. Again, shallower, warmer water. It sounds like a broken record. I get it, but that's what it's all about. So as we come down the edge, we've got folks fishing around here. Same thing. This is where Mod Squad's been. We've got LBI Sport Fishing. Actually, they do a lot of fishing on the beaches. They do a lot of fishing off the banks. They're doing some drum fishing, but they're also seeing folks catch stripers, again, back inside here. It's all about back inside this area. There's really, unfortunately, nothing else, nothing much going on out in the ocean. Same stuff we've been talking about all along here. Not new news. Actually was a little slower this week. Actually was much slower this week. But again, it's locked in on the weather. Now, we're going to see this all change. We're going to see great fishing by middle to the end of this week. No question, great fishing by Saturday. And there's no reason to really take this on any longer. It's going to be the same techniques, same everything. Match the hatch, casting those shad baits at it. There won't be much in the way of, if you have the worms, we talked about that already the last two calls, it's working the worms up in these flats. The nighttime fishing has been good as well inside there around the bridges. It will continue. We're on the backside of this moon, and we've got this warm weather. It's going to get good, and it's going to get real good. And then for you folks, which we haven't talked about much, for you folks out here to the east, again, probably we're talking first week of May. That water is so cold. We were talking to Mark DeCavia, who does been a pro staff for a long, long time, but getting his commercial boats ready. The water is just super cold out this way. Colder than usual, colder than they've already seen. We've got a new pro staff we'll talk about, Oh Brother, who's out here in Montauk, has been fishing for forever, as long as the Canyon Runner, which we're going on 45 years. And they've seen that they're cold. They're not even talking about doing their first trips till the first week of May. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about that as the weeks and months go on. But for now, the focus, without question, is going to be the triangle here in Raritan Bay, Jamaica Bay, all up in these areas, down the coast. We'll continue to pick away down here in the Delaware Bay, up in the Chesapeake. It's all going to get good this week. And what a good week for it to happen, with a lot of people taking long, long weekends, at least a 4-day weekend with some great weather coming. Should be fun. We should have a lot more to talk about. And hey, as a little added bonus, if any of these, as you can see them right now, two of these pro staffs and a couple of our members, if anyone sees any bluefin, we can report on that too. Hope everyone had a great week. Good luck to everyone going this week. It's, really April 15th is always kind of our official kickoff to the season. And that's this week. So let's get going. Talk to a bunch of people who are going to the water this week, and a bunch of people are going to fish Saturday. So enjoy. Good luck. Matt, hand it back to you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
On the Water's striper migration reports are also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Whether you're setting up to hold position on a rip line or inching your way toward a boulder-strewn beach, Garmin's force crack and trolling motor is up to the task in any saltwater environment. With autopilot features like anchor lock, cruise control, and route following, which can all be controlled via wireless remote, this bow-mounted trolling motor is built to help you make the most of your inshore fishing trips, regardless of the conditions. The force crack and trolling motor is available in a range of shaft lengths from 48 to 90 inches for bay boats, center consoles, down east style hulls, and more. Learn more about the force crack and trolling motor and everything Garmin Marine has to offer at www.garmin.com. Garmin, engineered on the inside for life on the outside. All right, a big thanks again to our guests Jeff Rosenkilde and Scott Thomas, and to Canyon Runner for their detailed input. And to quote Miss Penny Lane from one of my favorite films, Almost Famous, it's all happening. We've got more bunker and bass arriving in New Jersey and Long Island, and laced up schoolies pushing north into southern New England. And even though a majority of the fish being caught in New England are holdovers, those first waves of migratory bass in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and more recently southern Massachusetts are putting smiles on the faces of many anglers after a long, dragging off-season. We're a little over 2 weeks out from the beginning of On the Water Striper Cup. It's a 20-week catch-and-release-based striped bass fishing tournament with weekly opportunities to win prizes from our partners. You can learn all about the tourney and sign up at stripercup.com. For more migration updates, follow On the Water Magazine and Striper Cup on Instagram, and tune in again next week for another Striper Migration Report from On the Water.